The theme of this, the main theme of this retreat is Upasana for spiritual progress. It's obvious that Upasana means or Upasana leads to spiritual progress. Upasana is not for anything else. But this theme has been divided into 4 sessions. There will be 3 sessions today, and the final session, the last but not the least, which is very important, will be tomorrow. That is Upasana, its importance in the Ramakrishna movement. That is the important theme because that is more relevant to us. There are various methods of Upasana, right from the Vedas till the present day. India has been a land where this idea of Upasana is so deeply ingrained that over a period of time, based on the eternal Vedas, a lot of techniques of Upasana have evolved. And Sri Ramakrishna so beautifully synthesized all of them. He, in his one life, as Swami Vivekananda says, he lived or he practiced the different upasanas which Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism and other religions evolved over centuries in one single life. So that will be the theme of tomorrow's session, where we'll see how in the unique avatara of Sri Ramakrishna we find a wonderful synthesis which give validity to all these upasanas evolved over a period of time in different parts of the world. Not only India, but different parts of the world. Because each of these paths of Upasana have the capacity to lead us to its goal. Apparently the goal may be different, but as many faiths, so many paths. Jato mat, tato path. So that will be the subject of discussion in the last session. The first session begins with a general discussion on a very important idea that Swami Vivekananda expressed in his letter dated 1st October 1897, written to Sister Nivedita. It's one of the most significant statements he ever made, in which he defined civilization or civilizational progress as it should be compared to the prevailing ideas of those days and even today. And it is not just at a collective level of civilization that these ideas are true, but even at our individual level. Because as he himself experienced in Kakadi Ghat under the tree in Almora, that the microcosm and the macrocosm are built on the same plan. So what is true of civilizational progress is also true of our individual spiritual progress. There cannot be any difference. So he writes in this letter, it's a very, very significant statement. The lines that he wrote to Sister Nivedita, he says, there is but one, the Supreme Brahman, seen by the ignorant as matter and by the wise as God or spirit. And then he adds, the history of civilization is the progressive reading of spirit into matter. It's a very important statement that he made. because there were so many ideas of civilizational progress. Obviously, each idea or each movement which many people thought constituted civilizational progress were emphasized throughout the history of mankind, where there was, broadly speaking, a clash between material civilization and a predominantly spiritual civilization. Obviously, the people who believed, because for a majority of us, mankind has this idea that material civilization or progress that we make in the material civilization will lead to ultimate good. Because the idea of spiritual progress or the domination of spirit over matter is not very popular. It is only a creative minority, the great spiritual emperors of the world or prophets, who emphasize this now and then when the so-called emperors of the material world, for whom the material world is everything, they try to dominate over others and they try to pursue a path which they term as civilizational progress in civilization. So there have been emperors like Alexander and then colonial powers who just wanted to expand and progress materially and show that material progress leads to good in society. That is what they firmly believed, otherwise they would not do it. So there is always this clash. Unlike Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, where he thought religious beliefs, religious faiths, and other uniqueness which each civilization has is responsible for these clashes. So in the material world, there will always be a clash. To unify for real civilizational progress, as Swamiji says here, we have to follow this formula that it is always the spirit that should be dominating matter, not the other way around. That has been the goal of all the prophets, all spiritual leaders, all avatars. They came with the same message. In fact, Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, whenever adharma rises or adharma increases in society as a result of blindly following these materialistic values and think that material progress is civilizational progress, he says to establish dharma or establish the dominance of spirit over matter, the avatars come. Against the emperors of the material world, we'll find emperors of the spiritual world. That was the mistake people made when Jesus Christ said that he was the emperor of the spiritual world. He was emphasizing that. But only a few people understood him. And they thought he was challenging their domination, the material emperors. So the best way is to crucify him. But he insisted, my kingdom is the kingdom of spirit, and that kingdom is within you. So the approach, material progress and spiritual progress, the approaches are different, as Swamiji mentions in this letter. And further, the next line is also very important. How do we do it? He says, a progressive reading of spirit into matter. In fact, we do quite the opposite, the exact opposite of that. We try to read matter into everything. That is what the modern material civilization, all the so-called progress of material civilization has taught us, has trained us in such a way, as we read in the first verse of Bhagavad Gita, that God has of Kathopanishad, which we chanted, which we recited in the first meditation, that the approach should always be outside in rather than inside out. But unfortunately, Swayambhu, Paranchikhani, Vyatrunat Swayambhu, Tasmat Parang Pashyati, Na Antaratman, Kaschid Dhiraha, Pratyagatmanam Aikshat, Avrutta Chakshu, Amrutatpamichan. So this is a verse which explains why Swamiji says this. Progressive reading of spirit into matter. Because our tendency, God has created us in such a way. In the Kathopanishad, Yama is telling Nachiketa, who is ready to receive spiritual truths and who was tested by him by offering all the material sovereignty over the entire world. So many things he was offered. What constitutes material progress now? Everything that was desirable or that is desirable was offered to young boy Nachiketa. But he was not satisfied. And Yama knew he is the right candidate. And that's why he told him the secret of progressive reading of spirit into matter, how to do it. And then he says, the Swayambhu, it's not your fault. The Swayambhu himself has created us in such a way that we naturally gravitate towards the material world outside, because the senses by their very nature are outward going. So Kaschid Dhiraha. And Vivekananda famously said, somewhere when he was in Europe, that the whole of Europe, the material civilization of Europe, who used to dominate the material world in those days, he said, it is sitting on top of a volcano. And unless it changes its ways, it will be destroyed. And you see what happened, the 2 world wars and the destruction all around that happened. Swamiji said this much before. He obviously, when he was passing through Europe, he saw this, that the whole of Europe, or whole of material civilization, which had developed through science and technology, no doubt everybody marveled at its power and the capacity to do good, what they thought would do good to humanity at large. But Swamiji saw behind the flimsy foundation behind this material civilization. So he warned the entire Europe and the Western world by saying it is sitting on top of a volcano which is about to burst. And his prediction came true. So he firmly believed, and he said that it is a progressive reading of, if we want to survive, then we have to reverse this tendency, as Yama tells Nachiketa. Kaschid dhira, but only few wise people. Dhira means wise, it also means a man of strength. It requires tremendous strength to look within. The whole meditation that we did was turning our attention from inside out to outside in. So turn the senses, turn the gaze inward, and to try to look at the spirit within. Because as Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. But unfortunately, we look outside. So it has literally, as Yama tells Nachiketa, material civilization, the tendency to look outward, and which results in the so-called progress of civilization, is not correct. It has to be turned inward. The focus should be outside in. And that is where you can discover the eternal spirit, which does not change, as compared to the anitya or the changing world outside, which is based on change and which results in sorrow. But this unchanging, eternal Sat Chit Ananda, as we meditated upon reality, which is to be found within. All the traditions, all the spiritual practices emphasize this search within. The kingdom of God or the kingdom of spirit that we seek is within us. That's unanimously accepted in all traditions, all religions. So how do we do it? So in the next line, in that same letter, Swamiji says, he says two things. He says, matter changed into spirit by the force of love. He's speaking of the divine love, not human love. Speaking of the divine love, that attachment, as Prahlada famously said, that attachment that the people have in the sense objects, may I have the same devotion to you, the eternal Lord within. That is the type of love that he is referring to. Matter changed into spirit. It's not that there are two types of existences. That has to be remembered. Everything that Swami Vivekananda said, everything is Brahman, everything is that one. But the way people look at it, if the ignorant look at the same one and think that it is matter, but the wise look at it as God or the spirit. So this matter can be changed. The whole idea, the fundamental idea behind Upasana or all the Upasanas is matter changed into spirit by the force of love. Love does not necessarily mean bhakti here. It means love for the highest, love for attaining the eternal spirit which is within, the eternal conscious, the infinite existence, the infinite knowledge or consciousness or the infinite bliss. We meditated on all the three aspects in the beginning. So that is the whole gist of all Upasana Paddhatis or the systems of Upasana that humankind has evolved over a period of over centuries. So the gist of Vedanta, according to Swami Vivekananda, he writes to Nivedita that matter changed into spirit by the force of love. Love of Brahman, love of the eternal reality which is within. The changeless, blissful self. So then he writes, the letter continues and he writes something more, which explains why this discrepancy. Why some people give more importance to material development, material progress, whereas some people believe that will lead to destruction and only trying to see as much of spirit into matter progressively. It's not possible. We cannot give up our material ways because God has created us. That is why he says, Paranchi Khani, it is outward going. The tendency of human mind is outward going. So naturally, materialism or material ideas come very natural to us. They come very naturally to us. But kaschid dhira antaratmanam aikshat, pratyagatmanam aikshat, avrutta chakshu, amrutatvam icchan. But some people, some brave people, dhira or some wise people, turn their gaze inward. And of course, there will be always this creative minority who's trying to balance things. And when things become bad, Avatara himself has to come and re-establish the empire of the spirit, the kingdom of God which is within. All the prophets, every one of the incarnation has come to do it. So, the ignorant, then Swami Vivekananda, echoing the ideas of Bhagavad Gita, says, the ignorant sees the person in the non-person. The infinite, formless, blissful existence, eternal existence, is seen by the ignorant as matter, as this creation. The various evolutes of Prakriti, according to Sankhya, Purusha, which is pure consciousness, eternal consciousness, and it's Prakriti who creates these various forms, Prakriti and its evolutes. So the goal is to separate Purusha from Prakriti. That is the idea of Patanjali's yoga. How to separate matter and spirit. Prakriti, which is matter, which is this material creation, the universe. So the person, seeing the Purusha in Prakriti, person in non-person, and the sage sees, according to Swamiji, non-person in this person. Non-person means the infinite spirit, which leads to the underlying unity between this diverse creation, which is an evolute of Prakriti. Prakriti leads to diversity. So the goal of spiritual life or Upasana, any type of Upasana, is to enable this progressive reading of spirit into matter. And to the extent we can do it, our spiritual progress takes place. Upasana is not the other way around. Upasana cannot be used for material purposes. That also can be done. As Swamiji says, most of our religious theories and practices have become sanctified. He compared it to sanctified shopkeeping, where we try to materialize the spiritual values. That danger is always there. We expect that as a result of Upasana. That's why in the Ramakrishna tradition, very clearly it has been mentioned that there is a grave danger in using this Upasana for material progress. It will not give you material progress. If it is used for that purpose, then it harms the very purpose for which this Upasana is meant. It is meant for the reversal of our attitude, trying to see more and more, read more and more, or manifest more and more of the spirit in the material things, rather than trying to materialize spirituality. You have to spiritualize matter. That's what Swamiji says here. So we will be discussing in the next session. This session ends at 12, isn't it? So in the next session, we will be discussing on Upasana in common usage. You see, Upasana means puja. It can be ritualistic puja, which is a precursor to the manasik puja or the meditation that is real, which is Upasana. The real definition would be meditation. The real purpose of Upasana is meditation. But it is used as ritualistic worship also. There is nothing wrong in that. But you have to remember there are two different goals. Both are equally effective. The ritualistic worship leads to mental worship, leads to meditation, but their purposes or the way they do it, way they result in spiritual progress are different. One is Chitta Shuddhi, according to Shankara and according to all the other traditions. We do all Karma Yoga or the ritualistic worship, which involves our willpower, our actions that we do to serve the Lord. That is also an Upasana. Upasana means puja in that. It is worship. Formal worship or mental worship. We use different techniques. Those also have been evolved. We'll see how they were evolved right from the Vedic days to the present day. So that will be the that will be the theme of the next talk, which is after the devotional songs. Upasana is worship and meditation. So I'll not discuss much about that right now. We have to remember that Upasana as puja or as worship leads to Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi means purity of mind, which is required to practice meditation. Chitta ekagrata, the ekagrata or aikyagram, which is that is ekagrata, the concentration or meditation requires the chitta to be one-pointed. So that is the goal of Upasana in the higher sense, that is the higher forms, which is meditation. Whereas you will find that when we do Upasana, that is worship, which we will discuss in the next session, it slowly leads us from gross to the subtle. You see, in Vedanta, we have this idea of koshas in the Taittiriya Upanishad, that how Panchakosha Vichara, or the different levels of our existence, how we go from gross, how we read more of spirit into matter. There is a scientific process. One of the processes is we use the Panchakosha. We start with what we see, normally identify ourselves with, the Annamaya Kosha. So the Panchakosha Vichara, or they are also known as Annamaya Atma, the self which we identify ourselves with, the bodily self, or the Annamaya Atma or Annamaya Kosha. Then at a slightly higher level, we try to read a little more of spirit into matter, then we come to the Pranamaya Kosha, the vital forces, the 5 pranas. Each of these pranas, for convenience, there is only one prana, but for convenience it has been divided into 5 depending on its functions. How it enables our body to function properly. Body as well as it has an influence on the mind as well. So we come to the next level of subtlety. We start with the Annamaya Kosha. And then when we do this Panchakosha Vichara, we come to the Pranamaya Kosha. So that is why if we see, it has a lot of resemblance with Patanjali's yoga system. But in Vedanta, we go to the Pranamaya Kosha, and then there is this idea of Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha. There is a lot of difference between the two. Though in Western psychology it can be termed as mind. But one mind, to put it very simply, it is the reactive mind, the manas. The manas is the reactive mind. Its function is, at the most, it can develop some skills. The skill sets that we see, that all can happen at the level of Manomaya Kosha. Vijnanamaya Kosha is totally different. It's also a part of the so-called mind, but it is a subtle mind that is needed to progress in spiritual life. We can broadly classify the minds into 2. That is one mind, that is manas, which is a reactive mind. That's the best way we can define it in a very simple way. How our senses convey all the information that we see around us, and then the mind reacts. That is the function of Manomaya Kosha. It reacts, if it reacts in a very well-trained way, in a trained way, as it happens with skilled human beings, their Manomaya Kosha is developed. So the so-called skillful people, professional people who have developed their skills, they still are at the Manomaya Kosha level. Though the other koshas are not, they are functional, but that progressive reading of spirit into matter has not happened there. That's why Indian psychology goes deeper, where this reactive nature of the mind, that is depending on the sensory inputs, we process it and react in a very well-informed way. We say that the person is educated, he is a very skillful person, he is a dexterous person. That's not the type of skill we need for spiritual progress. That may not lead to spiritual progress. Because that's just a skill where the sensory input or the information, the analytical skills, everything comes within the purview of this Manomaya Kosha. It's a simple way of explaining that. Then we come to the Vijnanamaya Kosha, from where the real spiritual journey begins. When we reach that level, when our progressive reading of spirit into matter. It begins with the Annamaya Kosha, and then it goes to the Pranamaya Kosha. Then we have a well-developed body and the senses, because senses need this pranas. Harmonious control of the prana is necessary even to develop material skill sets. Imbalance in prana can result in our failure even to develop the Manomaya Kosha. Our personality at the Manomaya Kosha level, which is required even for a successful or material secular life, is not possible without Annamaya Kosha, dealing with Annamaya, Pranamaya and this Manomaya Kosha. The lower three levels, which according to the Western psychology, when you develop these fully, you are considered to be a well-educated person. No doubt it will give you the skills to earn a living. But according to Indian tradition, or according to the Vedanta, there are two more levels, Swami Ranganathan used to call the science of human possibilities, this Panchakosha Vichara. Even Satprakashananji has done this beautiful book, if you see, The Goal and the Way. It's a masterpiece, actually. If you don't have much background of Sanskrit, you can just read that book. It reads so nicely, The Goal and the Way. And the earlier meditation which I did was taken from another book by Revered Swami Satprakashananji Maharaj, Meditation, Its Process, Practice and Culmination. What meditation is, how to do it, in a general way. It has been so beautifully explained. So this progressive reading of spirit into matter through Panchakosha Vichara, if you see, it has been so nicely explained in the book Goal and the Way. So there we find that we reach a stage, we explore different possibilities. Swami Ranganathanji used to use this word, total development of human personality, is to say Vedanta is nothing but a science of human possibilities. We explore the first three possibilities of the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha and at the most Manomaya Kosha. But we don't even try to see what this Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya Koshas are in the Kosha Vichara. But the full exploration of all the human possibilities, including the spiritual possibilities, which are very, very essential. In fact, that is the goal of life according to Swamiji. That the spiritual possibilities, if they are left unexplored, a very successful human being is also, he has not made any progress from the yardstick of Vedantic values. He is just a pygmy. He may be a very great intellectual giant, a great scholar, maybe he has won several Nobel Prizes, but he still remains a pygmy in the spiritual world if his other two possibilities, the possibility of developing the Vijnanamaya Kosha and the Anandamaya Kosha, which is part of this Panchakosha Vichara of the Upanishads. They follow this path. Patanjali's yoga follows another path, but it's the same. It is equivalent to this. So there's another classification, Sthula, Sukshma and Karana. We'll go into that later because this Karana Sharira is very difficult to understand, the Anandamaya Kosha. They are the source from where all our stored up impressions, the thoughts that we think at the Manomaya Kosha level and also at the Vijnanamaya Kosha level, the thoughts that arise, which appear to arise from the depth of our consciousness, are hidden there. So this kosha cannot be neglected. We have to explore the possibility of trying to see what is the function of this Karana Sharira. What role does it play in our lives? Then only we can say a human being, it results in complete development of human being, material development as well as spiritual development. So progressively we have to, though we start with matter, there's nothing wrong. progressive reading. That's why Swamiji has defined it so nicely. It's just a progressive reading. That progress should not stop at any stage. If you stop at the Manomaya Kosha level, according to Vedanta, you have not explored your full capacity, spiritual capacity. And that is the most vital of all the human possibilities. Immense possibilities. As Swamiji says, each soul is potentially divine. The idea of 4 yogas, which we'll discuss in a third session, will be based on this. So we'll find that this system of slowly developing our personalities, the different aspects, koshas, the different levels of our personality, is nothing but reading of more and more spirit into matter. So when we read, the more we develop the higher koshas, according to Vedanta, we fulfill, or we have a better chance to reach the goal of life. So, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, for example, the Yama and Niyama, I will not discuss in detail. There are, Yama means the external disciplines. These are mainly for Annamaya and Pranamaya Kosha, development of these, and the Manomaya Kosha. We need the lower aspect of our personality, the gross aspect of our personality, to be somewhat in harmony or somewhat in control. So he starts with Yama and Niyama, followed by Asana, which gives steadiness to this body, and then Pranayama, which gives steadiness to the Prana, the life forces. So the whole gross body, or Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha, and also Manomaya Kosha, can be controlled or can be trained in such a way that it helps us in our higher spiritual fulfillment or spiritual progress, which starts from Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and then Samadhi. So it's the same. It's the same whether you follow the process of Vedanta or the process of yoga, Patanjali's yoga, which is a very scientific way of transcending these, or not transcending, reading of more and more spirit into matter. We start with the lowest, Yama and Niyama, that is external control by following, the 5 Yamas, Ahimsa, Satya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, speaking the truth, not hurting others, Ahimsa, by thought, word or deed, then Asteya, not taking that which does not belong to us, Asteya, Aparigraha, also means the same. Asteya means stealing, actually non-stealing. And these are disciplines, and of course Brahmacharya, that is celibacy. So all these 5 external methods or external disciplines, and these are to be followed by niyama, which are internal disciplines. These are mental states which help to develop our mind or purify our mind, you can say. So they are shaucha, purity, external as well as internal purity. Santosha, contentment, as Holy Mother very often used to say, there is no higher virtue than contentment. See how lack of contentment gives rise to restlessness of mind. So there is no question of practicing Upasana if there is no contentment in life. So Shaucha followed by Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Tapas some kind of austerity. Then Swadhyaya, that is trying to learn about one's own self, that means Swadhyaya, Swadhyaya, Swadhyaya. And Ishvara Pranidhana, worshipping the Lord. That can also mean ritualistic worship or higher worship, mental worship. Ishvara Pranidhana, reciting japa, doing japa, hymns, reciting hymns, they all come under this Ishvara Pranidhana. So even in Patanjali's yoga, this gradual unfoldment or gradual reading of spirit into matter is Upasana according to Patanjali's yoga. Then we come to asana, which simply means that which leads to steadiness. Sthiram Sukham Asanam. That is that which leads to some kind of steadiness of body, which is very essential if one has to make the mind steady. The waves, the vrittis of the mind have to be calmed down, which is the main purpose of Patanjali's yoga. So that is not possible without asana. That is the only function, not the various asanas which we do, which might improve our physical health. But the idea behind asana is that which gives sthirata, some kind of steadiness, to enable us to do do upasana or the higher meditations. That is pratyahara. The actual yoga starts from the stage 5 onwards. Pratyahara, which is Sri Ramakrishna so beautifully explained, that you begin your spirit. Whenever somebody asked him what is the upay ki, Mahashay upay ki. So pratham to first you say nirjan vas. That helps to withdraw the mind away from the objects. That is the first thing. If we go on adding more and more objects, more and more events, and if we meditate on them, then it will be difficult to handle. Dharana becomes difficult. Dharana means concentration, which is very often misunderstood as dhyana. Dhyana is a much higher state. We'll come to that meditation, but we'll come in the next talk on worship and meditation. But this steadiness or withdrawal of the mind, pratyahara, is the 5th step. That is from where we start touching our Vijnanamaya kosha, where the reflection of the eternal spirit, consciousness, bliss, absolute, which we meditated just now, that the light of that shines through, and the first glimpse of a higher spiritual possibilities, of really trying to read spirit into matter, starts from Patanjali's stage 5 onwards, pratyahara, where we attempt to reduce these waves, these vrittis, which alone enables us to see the self within. They are clouding it. Many of these thoughts, if we don't withdraw, the already existing thoughts, which are in our karana sharira as samskaras or impressions, they are bubbling up. And to that we add new things. So at least the first thing we can do is practice pratyahara, so that we withdraw the mind from the sense objects, external as well as internal. Objects need not be necessarily outside. We can go to a remote place and carry in our mind all the external objects that we think are our own. So when we go and when we try to practice pratyahara, as they say, leave everything behind. When we come to the shrine, when we come to a place of meditation, nirjanvas means that, solitude means that. That we leave behind all these external objects, not physically, but also mentally. So at least we prevent new objects from clouding our mind and driving away our dharana, the focus, the concentration that we want to develop. So that can be a form. We'll discuss that in the meditation section, next talk, where meditation on form is one way, nama and rupa, name and form. They are very intimately connected, as we'll see. So when we try to meditate, the other names and forms come and disturb us. That's why we struggle even with dharana. Dhyana is a very difficult thing. The 7th stage, just before samadhi. But if we struggle, we see, when we are trying to manifest, trying to see the spirit within, which is shining brightly in our buddhi, this higher aspect of the mind, Vijnanamaya kosha, is also known as buddhi. In Gita and all other Gayatri mantra especially, Dhiyo yona prachodayata. That is the prayer for awakening of the buddhi. The light of spirit shines through that buddhi. And then wisdom develops. The wisdom to go higher, make spiritual progress starts. So Gayatri mantra, or the development of this Vijnanamaya kosha, or exploring all the possibilities of Vijnanamaya kosha, will give rise to the beginning. It will be the beginning, you may say. Of course, the preparatory disciplines are necessary. Yama, niyama, you can't ignore any one of them. But the real challenge or the real reading of spirit into matter, the process begins, and we feel that we are getting some results when we develop our Vijnanamaya kosha. So that is what Patanjali's yoga says, and we do go to pratyahara, then dhyana. Of course, in bhakti it happens automatically. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say in this Kali Yuga, bhakti is very easy. Patanjali's yoga may be difficult. It may be difficult to find a solitude. If you see the gospel, today morning we were reading the gospel, there Sri Ramakrishna is making arrangements for Master Masha to live in solitude. Even within the Dakshineshwar campus, he says you go and you need solitude even there. He himself used to practice. Hriday used to find very often that Mama is missing somewhere. He used to run away from the crowd and go to Panchavati, which was like a forest. Nobody would go there. So in the midst of everything, Sri Ramakrishna managed to get some solitude. Find some solitude. It's very essential for pratyahara. If you see, even Master Masha used to always be so concerned about Master Masha. His life was miserable. When he first came to Sri Ramakrishna, the atmosphere was not at all conducive in his home. There were so many quarrels, so many issues. He even contemplated suicide. The situation was so bad. And in his school there was politics. There were so many things going on in the school. So he had no peace anywhere. And Sri Ramakrishna very nicely, slowly guides him and says, then you have to find some place, which M did. The wonderful gospel would not have been there if all the recorded things, he would not have found solitude either in his home, where he used to go on the top landing of the terrace, near the terrace, where nobody would disturb him. He did the same thing in his Morton Institute, in the school. He had his own unique way of finding solitude in the midst of this chaos of the world. His life was very chaotic, let me tell you. The situation was not suitable for pratyahara. So he had to go and meditate. How could he meditate on these wonderful words of the Master, which he had recorded? So he found out a way. In his own house, in the school, the same place, he put some asana there and he meditated when there was total chaos below. So if there is a will, there is a way. But still, Sri Ramakrishna made arrangement, is to tell him, now and then you should leave your home. So we have to leave behind all the existing objects at least. Not add further, not try to add more and more names and forms, new images, which will make our dharana more difficult. Everybody wants to meditate, but it is so difficult. These thoughts, which we already have in the subconscious mind, they are always trying to prop up from our karana sharira, the causal body. And to add to that, we create new images, new forms in the name of progress. So the first essential thing to read more and more spirit into this material existence of ours in Upasana is to find solitude, Nirjan Vas. And then of course, Sri Ramakrishna talks about Nitya, Anitya Vastu Viveka. That which is temporary, that which is not going to last, the things that we have to leave behind, they should not be a priority in our lives. There are other eternal values which require urgent attention. So that is Nitya, Anitya. Trying to always find out what leads to Nitya, what leads to Anitya. So giving up the Nitya very carefully, that is known as Viveka or discrimination. So Sri Ramakrishna also goes in a very systematic way. First solitude, pratyahara, then dharana. Dharana, we meditate on the Ishta, which we'll discuss in the meditation, the section on meditation. Even in bhakti, meditation is known as abhyasa, or there are many names, smarana or bhavana in different traditions. You don't have to sit and perform meditation. By singing the glories of the Lord, by practicing, repeating the name, that is also namopasana. That is also an upasana. Some people may not be good at forms, meditating on the forms. But anyway, this idea of upasana has been very beautifully put in one sentence by Swami Vivekananda, he says, meditation or upasana is the eternal relationship of the eternal soul and the eternal God. It's an eternal relationship. Through upasana, our upasya, the goal that we seek to attain. It can be several goals, there can be many goals. So how we came to this idea of upasana? It's an eternal relationship, but this goal changed as civilization progressed, as the scriptures you'll find in the early Vedas, you'll find mostly the Brahmana portion, the first portions which deal with so much of rituals. There upasana was there in a very primitive form. It was known as Angava Baddha Upasana. The main portion was rituals. But in between you would do a little, which is known as auxiliary. They are auxiliary. They used to do brief upasanas. But later on, as Swami Vivekananda points out, the evolution of the Vedas, Vedic history, you will find these Brahmanas and then Aranyakas and Upanishads, you will find these Vidyas where we meditate on different aspects of creation that is around us, like the horse. We try to use these different symbols and meditate on something which is deeper within, the spirit behind all this creation, through various forms, upasanas, which were known as vidyas. So that was how there are several vidyas in the different Aranyakas or the Upanishad portion, which is popularly known as Vedanta. So Vedanta does not only deal with the discussion on Brahman. They have other upasanas interspersed in between. So these upasanas help us to catch hold of the highest truth through symbols, through pratikas, pratimas. Pratimas are the images. Pratikas are symbols, like we have the yantras, there are many things. Symbols can be Shivalinga, or there are so many symbols which are used. So there are different meditations which enhance the importance or enhance the way we do upasana and approach reality, the formless God, which we worship through these forms. They are like doorways to the infinite Brahman. So we have the Gayatri Vidya, there is Madhu Vidya, we meditate on the sweetness or the wonderful sweetness that we see everywhere around, the herbs and everything. There are so many ways of meditation which were evolved in the Upanishads. And then you will find the different permutations and combinations of these upasana techniques. They gave rise to different sects. They all have the same purpose. They lead to the same process. They lead us through different processes to the state of meditation or dhyana. To give you an example, say there is a broad motorway or a highway where there may be different exit points or entry points. You come through any of these paths. That is what Sri Ramakrishna meant, Jotomat Totopat. But they finally come to a place where the meditative awareness or upasana leads you to a place, no matter where you start from. Upasana cannot be exclusive. They are inclusive. There are so many upasanas, and we will see as we will discuss in the last session how Sri Ramakrishna has managed to synthesize the authentic spiritual tradition that has evolved. The Ramakrishna orders upasana is a unique combination of these wonderful upasanas. Each one of them is capable, as Swamiji said, each one of them is capable to lead you to the highest. But a synthesis, a more balanced approach, by synthesizing all these wonderful techniques, there are some good things in every method or every upasana. So all these permutations and combinations that were tried, in India it was like a spiritual laboratory. Every technique was a valid technique if it is followed with a lot of yearning and sincerity. It led to the goal of that upasana. That is what Sri Ramakrishna showed in his life. It's unique in the history of the world. He came not to start a new Upasana, but show how the already existing Upasanas, each one of them, each of one of these approaches to the highest reality, to see more and more, progressively see more and more spirit into matter through different paths, can be equally valid, and a combination or a synthesis could lead you to that goal much earlier. That is why Sri Ramakrishna in his Swami Vivekananda in his small booklet, he hardly wrote anything except for the 2 hymns and 2 talks on my master. But he wrote a small booklet, Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna. It's a beautiful book. In that he mentions that there were many pathways. You are free to choose all these bylanes. But I appeal to every one of you, people who loved and respected Ramakrishna. He said, here is the broad highway where all these entry points, pathways lead. And he has created, by his strenuous effort, never before it has happened in history, the whole spiritual life through all these upasanas, in this short life, can you imagine? Every possible major upasana paddhati was followed by Sri Ramakrishna, and they blended so beautifully in his wonderful life. So obviously the tradition that we follow would be a wonderful harmonious synthesis of all these paths, because each of these paths are having some uniqueness to suit the different psychological setup or psychological psychological aspects of different minds. All are not equally emotional, equally given to cognitive thinking, and some people, each mind is differently constituted. So to suit everyone, these upasanas were evolved, and people naturally gravitated towards that which they liked. But Sri Ramakrishna, it was his wonderful genius that he combined. And this harmony was what Swami Vivekananda said, which is described beautifully by the emblem. We'll discuss it later. He says that this wonderful harmony of 4 yogas, the synthesis of all different diverse paths, is like a broad highway. And he appealed to all the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna in that small booklet. He says, we all invite you to follow this broad highway. The broad highway, the upasana, that is a synthesis of all these paths. So I think we have run out of time. So I'll conclude now and we'll continue in our next class on the theme Upasana as worship and meditation. Okay? Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. There's still 15 minutes, I believe. Huh? Do we have question answers now? Okay. Yeah. Oh, I thought it was 11:45. Yes. No. Yeah, it's a good question. See, as I told you in advance, earlier also when we did group meditation, as far as your individual meditation is concerned, you have to strictly, I'm repeating it, verbatim follow the instructions of your guru. Because that is very important. That is your path decided for you by your guru, the unique mantra, your Ishta. If you have a guru, if you have taken spiritual initiation, for your own personal spiritual welfare and development, you have to follow those instructions as much as possible throughout the day. But when you get time, when if you have some spare time, then you can think of this. These books, they are auxiliary. They are not, if you are spiritually, if you have taken spiritual initiation, then I would advise, that's what we were also told. When our acharyas taught us different subjects, we learned so many subjects when training center. So our acharya always told us, don't try to practice all of these. There are so many vidyas, Upanishads. If you go, there is no end. So that is why we have our Ishta Devata, the mantra given by our Guru, and a specific path which suits you, which is your private Upasana. That is the main thing in your spiritual life. If you have time, if you want some variety, or if you don't know how to spend time, then these hymns, there are so many wonderful things we can do. So it's not a question. Priority, of course, to be to you are given Upasana by the Guru. Yeah. Upasana and? Okay. Nididhyasana. Okay. No. Manana is just some kind of trying to intellectually come to a conclusion. Shravana is first. You don't confuse between these two. This is Upanishadic, the path of knowledge, what they do. Nididhyasana can be compared to meditation. There are so many ways of meditation. So when you come to Nididhyasana, that means a conviction that you have developed on some of the ideas that you have deeply analyzed, thought of after hearing. You hear so many things. But then you come to Manana just to come to a logic, to a conclusion, or some kind of certainty you develop. And then once you have done that, then you do Nididhyasana, which is equivalent to, you may say, to Patanjali's meditation. To make that idea, you see, Sri Ramakrishna, in Sri Ramakrishna's life, Swami Shardananji, that's one of the masterpieces. If you want to understand what sadhana is, there is a chapter on Sri Ramakrishna, Sadhaka Bhava in Bengali, but it is known as Sri Ramakrishna as the spiritual aspirant. It's a very important part of the great master. So there he talks in general about sadhana or upasana, and there he says, with Sri Ramakrishna, that Nididhyasana part I am trying to tell you, he says for him everything was a nervous association of ideas. They were not just ideas developed through manana. Through manana you may have so many ideas. You may go on endlessly listening to YouTube videos, and nowadays everywhere you will get wonderful ideas for manana. You may think, or somebody else may do manana for you. But till you practice Nididhyasana, till these ideas are not frozen in your brain, but they become part and parcel of your entire personality, all the koshas. Swami Shardananji says, being a medical man, he says, for Sri Ramakrishna, any idea that he took, he gave his 100%. And unlike other things, he did not do haphazardly. Just go on thinking, doing manana. He did Nididhyasana so intensely that it became, he says, it was a nervous association of the ideas that he considered to be real. So those ideas, when they become part and parcel of your entire personality, thought, word and deed, then it is Nididhyasana. That is the main purpose of Upasana. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pardon?
As you guided us to the guided meditation,
Mm-hmm.
taking a verse or a thought, you're contemplating on it, and then ultimately it might deepen into meditation.
It may lead. Yeah, I'll tell you, have you been initiated formally? Huh? You have been. So that should be this is just a preparatory. See, most of our sadhana or upasana have to be done privately. It's an eternal relationship between the eternal soul, your soul, and the eternal God whom you worship as Ishta. So that is very private and confidential. It is between you, your Guru. Whereas these meditations, I warned you in the beginning, these are guided meditation is just to create a sort of awareness, a kind of atmosphere before meditation, prior to meditation. It's a preparatory thing. Don't take it very seriously. I mean, you take it seriously, but it just creates a kind of, you see, for those who are initiated, for others it may be very useful to continue, but because you have the fortune of, Guru has selected a path for you, isn't it? And that's your only hope, let me tell you. If you hold on to that and just stick to it, the chances of spiritual progress will be more. Ishta-nishtha. You try, I'm not discouraging you. These are good mates. Sat Prakashanji, that book is wonderful. Whenever you want to create a good mood, it is fine. You can read Gita, you can read Upanishads. Nothing prevents you from. We have 5 more minutes. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Pardon? No. 12 to 1 is lunch. Then 1 songs. 2 o'clock is the next session. Yeah.
So this was a wonderful introduction that you can see that the clarity of thinking. This clarity of thinking is very important in our spiritual life. And then this practical aspect of it. And the third thing, tying everything back to Sri Ramakrishna. The 3 beautiful aspects of this that I especially appreciate. So I think we're all looking forward to the afternoon session. So make your way down slowly for lunch. Everything will be ready by the time we get there. And then those who are interested in singing, please try to attend this 1 to 2 session. And those who really know how to sing can do some individual singing. Otherwise, there's group singing.